Homemade kombucha is so delicious and so healthy for you. Come on, let's talk about it. Welcome to K&D's Homestead. I'm Donna. I made a batch of kombucha yesterday. I didn't even think about doing it on video. I was busy and in a hurry, so I'm sorry that with this video, I cannot demonstrate how I made my kombucha, but I am going to explain it, and it is so simple, you really don't need a demonstration to be able to make kombucha for yourself. If you've never made kombucha, you might enjoy it. You know, it's a delicious drink, homemade that is, and there's a lot of health benefits to it. And you just about can't mess it up. It's a fun drink to make, a lot of varieties. You can play with it and experiment and find what flavor you like. Now I want to explain what kombucha is. Kombucha is an ancient drink. It's an ancient recipe. The base recipe has been made for more years than I can say. Ancient is about the extent of my knowledge. Kombucha is a fizzy, fermented tea, often fruit flavored or herb flavored, or a combination of both. And it's a good replacement for soda if you're trying to kick soda to the curb, because you can make it as sweet or as bitter as you want, and you can have the carbonation with it that we all love from sodas. Some people drink it all the time on a regular basis as a replacement for the sugary sweet sodas, and some people just drink it once in a while for the health benefit of it. It's a lot like regular vinegar in the health benefits that it brings, although it's not as bitter. There are many health benefits to consuming kombucha. It is said that it boosts the immune system, it reduces the risk of cardiac disease, it reduces the risk of diabetes, it can improve bone and joint health, and it can reduce inflammation, as well as many, many, many other benefits. This ancient practice of making kombucha has now turned into a consumer product that you can find on the shelves in most stores, grocery stores, and things like that that sell food items. It can even be found in Walmart. I personally think that the store-bought version is a lot more bitter and less flavorful, less fruity flavor. Sometimes I've even found it to be flat and not even have that fizz, which comes from carbonation. And the store-bought versions, some of them even have preservatives in them. The recipe for making kombucha is pretty simple. It's made with black tea or green tea. It has sugar in it, and it has a SCOBY. A SCOBY is a gelatin-like disc that is grown from yeast and bacteria. In kombucha, it's considered the mother, pretty much like the mother that's in apple cider vinegar or organic vinegar, and it serves a similar purpose. The word SCOBY is S-C-O-B-Y, and it stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. That SCOBY, placed into the mixture of kombucha, serves to break down the sugars from the tea, and you're going to have added sugar in there. It consumes the sugar, feeds on it, and breaks it down to alcohol and carbon dioxide. That does not make it an alcoholic drink. It's just a fine amount of alcohol, like anything that is fermented or brewed with sugar. And then there's the yeast, like I mentioned. And it turns that mixture into a tangy, fizzy, fruity drink. Carbonated. A SCOBY starter can be purchased online You can also make it yourself. That is a lot longer process than if you have one you can get online, or even maybe get a piece of one from a friend. And you want your SCOBY to grow. As it grows, it gets bigger and bigger in whatever vessel that you choose to make your brew in. That SCOBY is going to take on the shape of that jar or vessel, and it's going to grow, and it's going to build taller and taller layers in that jar. You can peel or cut layers away. When you have too much and it's grown too much, you can throw it away. You can share pieces with a friend or family, or you can feed it to your chickens. If you have chickens, it's very healthy to give to them, or you can put it in your compost pile. But the hope is to make that SCOBY grow and enlarge in your jar. I have had them to grow so big I couldn't get them out without taking scissors and cutting them into chunks. In fact, my SCOBYs that I have now are in chunks rather than in disc, because I had to cut the SCOBY to get it out of the jar to make new batches. And that's okay, that's normal. It will reform into a round disc. The more batches you make, the bigger it will grow, and the thicker it will grow. SCOBYs will be slimy. That's okay, that's normal. They will certainly be ugly. That's normal. And they will form strings that will go down into the tea mixture. That is normal as well. Whenever I continue making my batch, I will strain those. A lot of people don't strain them, but I will strain them, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. Sometimes people eat the SCOBY. That is not for me. I'm just going to say that right now. That is not for me. I don't even like the stringy stuff. I will strain mine out. So now let's talk about making that first batch of kombucha. I have a book that I'm going to share with you in a few minutes. I make mine in a 1-gallon jar. This used to be a pickle jar. It's perfect for the amount that I want to make. As long as you use a glass jar that has a wide lid that you can get that SCOBY in and out of, it doesn't matter. They make specific vessels to brew kombucha. I find them to be a little pricey, so I just stick with this. There is a temperature gauge on the front of my jar. You can purchase those from Amazon. They're very inexpensive, a couple of dollars at most. It's a peel and stick, and it's exactly like you would use on the outside of your aquarium, because you want to maintain your temperature. Mine feels cool. Mine is registering at 75. 75 and up to 85, I have found to be the best. If it drops down cooler than 75, then your culture in here kind of just goes into a dormant stage, and it's not going to brew very well. If it goes above 85, actually I would recommend 80. If it gets too hot, it can kill your SCOBY, and then you have to start all over again. I'm at 75. I kind of would prefer 77, but in the summertime when you have AC going, that's about what I get in here. You don't want a lid on this tight. You want a piece of cloth. A lot of people will use a coffee filter, and that's fine too. I wanted something a little cutesy, so I just cut a cloth and I put a rubber band over the top. It needs to breathe, so you need a breathable material of some sort over the top. Whenever I make my batch, like I said, I made this yesterday. This is just a new batch. I use a label This is a washable label, so it will come off. It'll even peel off. I've got 2 layers on here. And I date it because for me and my personal taste, I like to brew this for 10 days. 7 to 10. I don't like to go over 10. Some people will. This is an experiment that if you start making and have not got the experience and you decide you want to start making, a lot of times you have to go through several batches before you find the flavor that you like to have. As far as the strength of the tea and the vinegar flavor that it will produce, and it does produce a vinegar flavor. I like mine to be very mild, so 7 to 10 days. It starts getting a lot stronger and more vinegary after that. I wouldn't go any less than 7 days, but my range for the flavor that I like, which is a mild flavor, is 7 to 10 days. That's why I date it. And once I make it, I just put it up on the shelf in my pantry, which is it's an open room. It's not in a closet. A lot of people will put it in darkness on a shelf in a closet. I don't. It seems to serve just fine for me. And I leave it undisturbed for those 7 to 10 days. And what this batch is made of, it has the SCOBY in it. I just use straight black tea. Usually it's the Lipton brand, but there are a lot of other brands that are high quality brands. Doesn't matter, whatever is your personal choice. 4 family size tea bags or 1 extra large tea bag. It depends on what I have on hand. Sometimes I have the really large ones that make 1 gallon. Sometimes I have the smaller family size. So 4 of those or 1 large. Put it in 4 cups of water, bring to a boil, and then set it aside. At some point before it cools down completely, 1 cup of sugar, warm enough to dissolve the sugar. You don't want to add that mixture on top of your SCOBY. So I add the sweetened tea to the jar. I fill the rest up with cold filtered water. I have a filter on the fridge, so that's the water I use. If you don't have that, you might want distilled water, but tap water is not good for the SCOBY if you have city water. The boiled tea mixture, 4 cups of water with 1 cup of sugar. Let it steep long enough to dissolve all that sugar. Pour it in here. Fill the rest up with cold filtered water. When this mixture is at room temperature, add the SCOBY. This is for the initial startup. Then it sits for 7 to 10 days. At the end of that 7 to 10 days, you're going to pour all of the mixture except 1 cup. Save that, reserve that to the side. Pour all the mixture into your jars. 1 gallon of this makes 4 quart jars. Once you've picked out the flavor that you're going to use, in these 4, I chose fresh cherries that I got from the grocery. I had to pull the stems off of them and wash them, but I have fresh cherries in here. I filled my jars about not quite half full of cherries each one, and I poured the kombucha mixture into the jars. I put a lid on. For 3 days, several times a day, I come along and I just give a little swirl, and you'll see it, my lid's leaking, you'll see it fizz up. the vinegar fermented tea is going to react with the sugars in the fruit, and it's going to create carbonation. I will burp it, which is just open and shut the lid. Let me get a rag. And I just give it a little swirl to keep everything mixed. And I go about my business. I do this maybe twice a day for 3 days. Burp it, swirl it, put it back. These just stay on the counter so I can see them and pay attention to them. Now, in the process of those 3 days, the fruit will get quite slimy. It will absorb some of the kombucha. And to me, I throw those away. I don't like them. At the end of 3 days, 3 or 4, I will come back and I will strain all the fruit out, seal it up, and refrigerate. And it's ready to drink. If it turns out that it's not quite sweet enough, you can add sweeteners. You can add sugar. You can add honey. You can add maple syrup. You don't want to add artificial sweeteners. And for the initial brew, you want to use, I'm using cane sugar, just plain white sugar, but you can use maple sugar, you can use agave, you can use honey, but you need to use pasteurized honey, not raw honey. In most cases, you want the raw honey, but the raw honey has its own bacteria involved in that, and it won't work well with the bacteria that's going on in the jar, so you want to use pasteurized honey. I just stick with using sugar. Most of that sugar is going to get eaten up anyways, and the sweetness that you get is going to actually come from the fruit that you put in the jar. The sugar is absorbed and used up by the yeast in the kombucha. And it's fizzy, it's sweet, and it's real flavorful. I like to use raspberries. I like to use raspberry and hibiscus mixed. You can use all kinds of floral edibles, such as flower petals, rose hips. There are so many different flavors that you can create. You can even flavor this with your elderberry syrup and make an elderberry flavored kombucha. It's that simple. So after you have added your fruit to the jars and you have that 1 cup of reserved kombucha, you save that, you make a new batch, which is making more tea with the sugar, and you add that to the 1 cup, which means then you'll add a little bit less water the next time. And so you have your starter kombucha, you will have a new brew, and you will have your SCOBY. And you just keep that going. If you don't have time to keep it going and keep a continuous brew all the time in the making, and it's happened to me, you can just let it sit and just build a SCOBY hotel and do nothing with it. And the SCOBYs will just grow bigger and bigger and bigger down the jar. I have had them grow more than half of the jar, and I don't use the kombucha. After the 10 days, it's really too strong for me. So when you are ready, then you will take out all but 1 cup, and you make a new batch of tea and add to it, and you start all over. But in the meantime, it can sit for months building a SCOBY hotel. You just don't want to make your jars of drink with the batch that's in here. You want to make a new batch using just the 1 cup. It's really simple. It is not time consuming to make, and it's very flavorful and very healthy. The most important thing to remember is you don't want this to get too cold and you don't want it to get too hot. You can experiment with all kinds of flavors, herbs. You can make just so many different flavors. Any fruit that you like, you can add to it and make that fruity flavor. I personally have made it with banana. Banana, in my opinion, does not work really well because it leaves the kombucha quite slimy in flavor. You do get the banana flavor. You can mix. You can make strawberries with another flavor, mix and match. The thing about this is you can't really mess it up, but what you can do is experiment. And if you've made a flavor you don't like, well, you put that aside and you find another flavor, and you just keep experimenting with different flavors. I do have a little bit of the stringy activity going on in here, and that is normal, not to worry. As long as your SCOBY doesn't mold, and there's no reason it should if you are treating it right. This is actually a living organism, so you do have to take care of it. But if you decide to try it and you don't like it, no harm. If you try it and you do like it, this is provided you've never done it before, then this is a great alternative to drinking sugary sodas all the time. You can experiment with whatever flavors you want, coming up with your own ideas. You can add vanilla. You can add so many things. But to help you out, I'm going to share this book that I have. I bought it years ago, and it's just the kombucha book. I bought it in the bookstore in my local area. This book has been updated now online, and it's called the Big Kombucha Book. In this book, it explains exactly what kombucha is. You'll see it in stores in all kinds of shapes and bottles. I used to make mine in pretty decorative bottles, but it was very hard with those really skinny necks to get the fruit out, so I switched over to making mine in quart-sized jars. But I did purchase a lot of bottles. Let's see here. Here's some pictures of the real fancy bottles for making kombucha. And that's good if you're going to make some as a gift and give them away. But if you're using them for yourself, it's easier to use a wide mouth quart-sized jar. Anyways, in this book, there are so many good recipes. There's stories in here about where kombucha came from. There's the basics of what kind of teas you can use. You can use black tea. You can use green tea. You can use Irish tea. There are guidelines in the book for temperatures. There's pages in here talking about the best types of sugars and the why you should and should not use different types of sugars. What type of vessel to use. Here's the gallon jar with a cloth cover. See, it has a cloth cover. And that's the method that I prefer to use. A lot of go-to information. These are the pretty bottles. And they are pretty and decorative for certain good uses, but I find that the jars work better for me, for my own personal. Now, one thing I did forget to mention, when you're making it in the first batch, the original in my case, the gallon jar, that's considered the first fermentation. When you put it into the smaller jars, like the quart jars that I've used, and you add your fruit, that is considered the second fermentation. It does continue to ferment. That's why you have to burp it and release some of the gases out of it. If you don't, you might find it spewing out. I've heard videos and people online talk about the bottles exploding. I've never seen that happen. It just does build up a lot of gas, and when you open it because you're ready to use it, you might get splashback in your face, but I've never had one. I don't brew my I don't do the second fermentation but for 3 to 4 days. A lot of people brew it a lot longer, but I don't like that heavy flavor. I like a mild flavor. What else does this book have? It has information on how to deal with your SCOBY, how to divide it and cut it up if you need to do that. The do's and the don'ts. And then lots and lots of recipes. You can use fruits. You can use spices. Let me share some of this. Recipes using fruit. All kinds of fruit. And the recipes are divided based on flavor. For example, here's recipes using apple, apricot, banana, blackberry, blood orange, elderberry, blueberry, cherry, cranberry, figs, grapes, grapefruit. So the recipes are in sections according to the flavor of the fruit that you're going after. Honeydews, lime, lemon, passion fruit, papaya, mango, pineapple, plum, pomegranate, and even raisin, strawberry, raspberry, watermelon, and tangerine. And then there's a section on using your herbs to make an herbal flavored kombucha. Burdock, calendula, chai spice, vanilla, clove, elderflower, cinnamon, lavender, used in making Four Thieves, hibiscus, lemon balm, root beer, mint, rose hips, vanilla beans, using St. John's wort, sassafras, thyme. And then there's another section with superfoods. And these are combinations of flavors. It has a savory section. Beet and bacon. A spicy section. A vegetable section. Medicinal section. How to make medicinal flavored kombucha. Ginger, ginseng, holy basil, turmeric. Smoothies, sodas, and spritzers. That's a good one. The smoothies and the sodas. A kefir. Root beer float. Ciders. I really love this book. And there's more than this one book. There are a lot of books on the market to learn how to do kombucha. This is just a good book for me. I have some smaller, thinner books. I didn't like them too much, but this one is packed with information. Shrubs. And there are ways to make alcoholic drinks using rum and gin and bourbon and tequila and vodka. The list goes on and on and on. You can make vinegar with it. You can use it in making bone broth. You can use it to make a sourdough starter. There is so much in this book. You can make kombucha flavored ketchup. I hadn't even noticed that. Mayonnaise, mustard, ranch dressing. Oh my goodness. Add it to spice up your barbecue sauce. And then you can use it to make vegetable sides. Add it into salads. This book is packed. I'm going to put a link to the other book on Amazon down below in the description of this video. And it's the same authors, the same book. I think it's a little bit bigger, but it's called The Big Book of Kombucha. And I think it just has more information. That's what's available on Amazon. But you can get this book or any other book from bookstores and online. That is my advice, is don't try to fly by the seat of your pants if you're trying to learn to make kombucha for the first time. Is get a book that has information in it and has some recipes and guidelines for you to use. There's not a lot of do and don'ts, and it's something that you're really not going to mess up, but to keep from wasting ingredients, you might enjoy following some recipes, and they're simple recipes. It's usually just about every recipe I've seen is just a couple of recipes or a couple of ingredients. So that's the end of this. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was informative, and I hope that if you have never tried kombucha, try it for the first time. You might like it. And if you've never made homemade kombucha, try it, experiment. It's a lot of fun, and you can try different flavors and mix and match things up, and you're not really going to go wrong. And there's no wrong way to do it. You will, over time, adapt your own way to do it. If you have made kombucha, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what flavors are your go-to flavors. If you want to share your favorite recipe, be sure to put it down in the comments below. I'd love to read about it. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see y'all on the next video. Bye-bye.